Hi, welcome back. How much money are you spending on your wedding cake? Do you want people to see it? When were you planning on cutting the cake? Is your cake going to be served for dessert? Or if you're doing a money dance, maybe you're going to pass out the cake during the money dance. Here's a couple things to think about. Have you been to some wedding receptions in which when the bride and groom are up there, everyone gets around the bride and groom in a big circle and everybody's participating and they're watching them like they really care about them a lot, which they do, I'm sure. And then you've been to other wedding receptions that the bride and groom are up there cutting the cake and everybody's sitting down. Nobody, it's like, don't they even care? They're all sitting in their seats watching from a distance. What do you notice about those receptions? I'll bring something to mind maybe you didn't think about. If you cut the cake as soon as you come into the facility, number one, people didn't have a lot of time to look at it anyway, but if you cut it as soon as you come in, or even prior to dinner, even if you have the blessing and you have the toast and then you cut the cake prior to dinner, people are sitting down and they're talking. Those are the receptions that people normally do not get up and go over to the table. Even though your disc jockey will say, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, the bride and groom are cutting the cake, or whatever he's going to say, they're not going to go up. People normally don't get up. They're in the middle of conversations. They'll watch, but they're not going to say, let's go up there. They're not going to do that. If you cut the cake about 15 minutes after dancing, and I know that can be difficult if it's for dessert, but keep this in mind. If you cut the cake about 15 minutes after the dancing begins, people are already used to being out of their seats. They're already up, moving around. You'll literally have everybody around the cake watching. Not only that, there's a lot more time for them to look at the cake. Now, aside from the fact that when you cut the cake will determine how many people are around it watching you, participating, aside from that, how does it affect the dancing at the reception? Big difference. Cutting the cake is an activity, and after every activity, you will have more people on the dance floor. If you've been to wedding receptions that had a money dance, notice how many more people dance on the dance floor after the money dance. If you have a mixed age group, which most of them do, after the money dance is when you're playing more of the new music, the club music, and all the traditional stuff is before the money dance. After the bouquet and garter, a lot more couples on the dance floor. Same with the cutting of the cake. The more you get people out of their seats, go up to the dance floor, go back to their seats, up to the seats, the more they get up moving back and forth, the more dancing you will have. The cutting the cake is an invaluable tool for dancers. I can't tell you how many times I bite my lip when I hear they're cutting the cake prior to dinner. I know I have to work harder. I can still get them up dancing, but it's a lot more of a challenge to do so. Cutting the cake is a great activity because once we slow it down with a slow song prior to the cake, we have a nice fast set of music, have a nice slow song, and we announce after this song, the bride and groom we're going to cut the cake. So then you have the cutting of the cake. We invite everybody to go up around the cake to take photos. And if you do this after dancing, you have everybody around there. Everyone's around that cake in one big circle, participating, watching it, taking photos. And then after the cutting of the cake, wow, you get a lot more dancing. You go right into the dance. And now everyone back to the dancing. But the opposite's also true. If you cut it before dinner, and the kitchen will give you a great excuse for this. Banquet facilities are great for this. Oh, we want to cut it before dinner so that we have time to have it ready for the money dance. I've done so many weddings, they don't even touch the cake. They're serving the dinner. They don't even take the cake away. And I've played everywhere. They don't take the cake. The only reason that they tell you to cut it prior is it does make it a little bit easier for them. And there are a lot of amateur DJs out there, and they wait forever to do it. And who does it mess up? The kitchen. They never have a chance to do it right. If you have a professional disc jockey that's going to organize things, cut the cake later in the evening. Doesn't have to be too late, especially if it's dessert, but at least after the dancing has begun. It makes a tremendous impact on the wedding, plus your guests get to see the time and effort you put into making the cake. By the way, if your cake is dessert, and you can't wait to cut 15 minutes after the dance, you have two other options. You can't cut it after dinner. You have to either cut it as soon as you come into the facility, right? Introduce the bridal party, they go to the cake and they cut it, and then they have the blessing and the toast and go into dinner. Or you can go through dinner, and then at the end of dinner before the first dance, you can cut the cake, before the dancing. That's the one you want to go with. At least let the cake stay through dinner so people can see it. Don't cut it as soon as you walk into the facility. And by the way, if the facility tells you, we want to cut it prior, ask them, is it really necessary? I spent a lot of money on this cake, I want people to see it. And my disc jockey is used to doing it later. It makes a world of difference, it really does. I'll summarize everything I said about the cake with this. I've done a lot of weddings, and I've done a lot of all three. I've seen cutting it in the evening, after the first dance, when it's for dessert, and when it's for the money dance. That's number one. I've seen cutting it right after dinner, before any dancing begins, which is my second choice I'd recommend doing. Few people get up and participate, but not nearly as many as the first. And the third one is cutting it as soon as the bride and groom come into the facility. And sometimes facilities make you do this. They'll put the cake centered on the dance floor. So You can't do anything until the cake's gone, so you got to cut it right away. But in all three of those, I've never ever seen the cake being cut later in the evening that somebody regretted it. And it's always worked out great. In the other two places, when you cut it as soon as you come in and cutting it before dinner, we have to work a lot harder to keep people on the dance floor. It's a great tool if dancing is important to you. So give it some thought before you choose one of the early ones. Thanks for watching.